How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Butcher Boys from 2013. That's this one on this set. I've been looking for this film for quite a bit, and I finally found it in this relatively bare-bones pack from Phase 4 Films. It's simply titled 8 Horror Movies. So yeah, kind of weird to see such a bare-bones pack that also includes Absentia, the Mike Flanagan film. So, whatever though. Butcher Boys from 2013. This is directed by Dwayne Graves and Justin Meeks, and stars Ali Faulkner, Johnny Walter, and Derek Lee Nixon, and is written and produced by Kim Henkel. More on him in a minute. This movie is about some young kids who are in this race, and during this, one of the cars inadvertently hits a dog, and the dog is owned by these gangsters who want revenge and want to kill people, all the people in both cars. Well, from there we get a really extended chase sequence throughout San Antonio, and about halfway through we realize, wait a minute, these aren't just gangsters. They're up to something very, very strange, very gruesome, and very macabre. And then when we get to the second half of this film and see what they're up to, it gets big, it gets insane, and it gets crazy. But that would make a lot of sense if you know Kim Henkel. He's the writer and producer of this movie, and he's the reason why the front of the DVD says, "From the creator of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre." Kim Henkel was a co-writer of the first Chainsaw movie, him and Tobe Hooper. Later on, he would do his own Chainsaw movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 4, The Next Generation, which not everybody knows about, but if you know about it, you can't really forget it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 4 is big and crazy. It's insane. And it's got Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger in it. It's this super weird, super cheesy slasher movie. And this movie, Butcher Boys, was supposed to be a follow-up to it. This movie started out life as Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 5. However, time would go on. The project wouldn't get off the ground, they would eventually lose the rights to it, so it got rewritten as a standalone project, and it really does feel like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre spin-off. There'll be several moments and a few characters, especially towards the end of the movie, where you can go, okay, that character is parallel to a chainsaw character, and they even do a dinner table scene, you know, so yeah, you can definitely see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre influences, but I guess I should begin by comparing this to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4. If you guys know Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4, you can see a lot of parallels between the two movies. For example, you get these characters who, your good guy characters, are kind of weird stereotypes. They sort of haphazardly stumble into this plot, much like in Part 4, and the villains, a lot of them are big, weird, and crazy, just like in Part 4. And there's a few other weird little parallels, like a really bad body double, or a chainsaw that is shown a few times, but much like in Part 4, never actually kills anybody, which is kind of weird. But yeah, it does have that feel, you know, Matthew McConaughey's character being big and crazy. You do get lots and lots of crazy people in this movie, especially in that second half. And comparing the two directly, I'd say that this movie doesn't have anything as good as Matthew McConaughey's character in Part 4. But other than that, I'd say this movie is significantly better. It's just the pacing, the tone, the ideas. A lot of this is much more well put together, and I feel just really does go bigger and insane and more of a direction than Chainsaw 4 did. So I feel it's a little more put together. It still is crazy and weird and definitely has some of those moments that leave you going, what? You know, like a character, you know, one of the crazy family members will randomly be in a dress. Very, very part 4. You also get one of the evil characters chasing a girl around and says, "You can't hide from me. I can smell you. You smell like Twinkies." Okay, that's a weird moment there. And there are a few other things, you know, there's a man that claims to be the father of a missing girl, and he's like in his underwear covered in like oil or something so that they can't grab onto him. And I feel like he may be a parody of Dennis Hopper's character from part 2. There's also, with this party girl, there's the "Hey Handsome" scene, which really just does come out of nowhere, but I'll let you guys see that for yourself. So yeah, there is some really weird and really extreme moments that are very reminiscent of the weird and wacky stuff from part 4. But I feel like, you know, being a spin-off movie, kind of doing its own thing, the weirdness fits better in this world, but it still is pretty weird. The other big thing I do have to mention with this movie is this is a pretty much all-action slasher. I talked about quite recently on this channel the slasher movie Dark Ride, and Dark Ride is a third-act slasher. A lot of slasher movies are third-act slashers, where it's kind of scary for 2/3 of the movie, and then the last third, things heat up and people start dying. A lot of movies have to do that because when slasher movies start slashing, they tend to burn really hot and bright, and you can't really go back after that point. So in turn, a lot of slasher movies wait to the end. But a few slasher movies start really, really early and try to keep it up the whole time. And that's pretty rare because it's pretty hard to do. Can you keep this manic energy going? A few others I can think up off the top of my head. Terrifier, that one started pretty early. But the biggest example I give of a constant chase scene slasher would have to be Laid to Rest. And Laid to Rest is another video, I'll get to that one in a little bit. But this one, it does actually balance it pretty well. The first part, where they're chasing people throughout San Antonio and you get a whole bunch of abandoned buildings and stuff, that's pretty cool, but it does go on for a little long, and I was thinking, oh man, is it gonna be all this for 90 minutes? I didn't know if I could do it all for 90 minutes, but it has a 2-act structure, and halfway through this movie it changes. It's still very much hot, very much going, but when it changes to the second act, it is a nice change of pace. It really breathes in a lot of fresh air, and that's because it goes from the chase around San Antonio section to the evil villain lair section. Really interesting lair. I mean, you gotta love an evil villain lair, but when you get to the second half, that's when you get the more direct parallels to Chainsaw. You get some characters you're like, okay, that's the parallel for Leatherface. I think they call him Amphead. And then you get, okay, that's supposed to be the old man, from part 1 and 2, you know. So you get more direct parallels, but also you get this sense of a conspiracy. The idea that, you know, it's a big gang, you know, not just a family, but a whole gang, but they're doing something for this other group of people. You even get a brief glimpse at what looks like sort of a cannibalistic Eyes Wide Shut party, you know, at one point. So yeah, there is a lot going on here, and like I said, it does build to a really, really big, interesting, and over-the-top ending. The weapon that they pull out at the very end is really fun, and we've never seen it in a Chainsaw movie before. But yeah, it goes pretty far at the end. So yeah, it's insane, it's goofy, fun, it's gruesome, and it's action-packed through the whole thing. Now, I do want to say it's definitely not perfect and definitely has its faults, primarily the first half going on a little bit too long. I wish we had, taken this first half and had a little bit more moments to introduce the characters and to build up what was going to happen. And yeah, the first half isn't perfect. It's interesting, but it goes on a little bit too long. But then after that, wacky, crazy, insane insanity. And yeah, really, really a strange movie, but I am glad I watched it. And I did think it was pretty fun. It was a good slice of pure insanity, and the fact that this is the unofficial Chainsaw Part 5, that's just another good thing as well. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk a bit about the plot in a little bit more detail. I'm gonna not be doing any major spoilers, but I do want to analyze the movie and, sort of say my piece on some of the plot points. We open up San Antonio. There's a girl at a taco truck, and when the guy at the truck looks away, some people jump out of a van, grab her, and pull her into the van and speed off. There's actually a little girl that sees this and tries to tell her father, but the father's not listening to the kid, and in turn the bad guys get away. There's also some news audio talking about missing people and, the new urban environment, and this news footage really kind of sets the tone of, a bigger city true crime tale. So similar to Texas Chainsaw, but on a different path. It's Texas Chainsaw, but in a city, so that's interesting. But anyway, we jump to our main characters. It's these people having a birthday party. You get this guy and his girlfriend. And his girlfriend is quite the character. She says, I want to live my life and do exactly what I want to do. If something pops into my head and I want to do it, I'm just going to do it. YOLO, right? But then he has other friends that are much more sane. A brother and a sister. The sister is very much the final girl archetype, and her name's actually Sissy. The sister character's named Sissy. But anyway, after the birthday party, they go to a gas station, as you're one to do in a Chainsaw film, and we see the girlfriend going into the gas station, and we do get a little bit of what she says, but for the most part, this scene is told from the people waiting around the pump, and you see her get in a fight with two random guys and key their car. Everybody hops in the car and speeds off. That whole, why wouldn't you just live your life doing whatever you wanted to? Well, it turns out because you wind up hurting yourself and the people around you. Anyway, they get in this big car chase, and the two people from the gas station are pursuing them. When they see a dog in the road, they swerve around it. The other people don't, and they hit the dog. Luckily, it's okay. As long as the dog's alive, it's fine. It does, get a bandage around its paw. But anyway, the dog is owned by these gangsters, and the gangsters are mad that someone hit their dog when they're driving around the streets acting like lunatics. So the gangsters kill the two people in the car that actually hit the dog. But that's not enough. They're going to pursue the main characters throughout San Antonio. And it does kind of remind me of, in Chainsaw Part 4, random group of 4 people getting in a car and randomly getting lost and randomly getting into the situation. It's still kind of random, but definitely has more focus and point than Part 4 did. But anyway, a car chase. That's something pretty different for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The whole, it's in a city, it's like city crime, and then there's a car chase. I do kind of like that this one isn't an official one. It allows it to go in different directions and not worry about if it's close enough to being in the franchise, And I do kind of like to think of this as, in the Chainsaw world, but a different family, you know? So, yeah, in the city, car chases, it's different. But eventually, they wreck their car and they have to go on foot, and they, of course, split up, which maybe isn't the best thing to do, and the gang members are going to go after them, and it's San Antonio, it's nighttime, there's a lot of businesses are closed, and apparently a lot of them are also abandoned, so wandering through an unfamiliar city, gangsters following you, you never know where they're gonna pop up, and a few cool little scenes in here, and overall I did like it. But yeah, it does go on for quite a bit. You know, I think this was probably easier to film than the second half, and they gave it a little more time than it should have. It's still interesting, but it does go on about 10 minutes too long, and I wish we had spent some of this time doing like a mysterious setup as to who the gang is and defining our lead characters a little better. But whatever, it's still a fun chase sequence, and eventually, though, you do get to the villain's lair, and that's a really interesting thing, you know? It is kind of like in part 2, where they have sort of an underground lair, but this is much bigger, you know? It's not just a family of like 4 to 6 people, it's a whole gang full of people, and the people they associate with to make money off of this. And they do a good job of showing you things and implying what the gang might be doing, without necessarily spelling it out and over-explaining everything. There's, for example, some junkies in this movie that you kind of wonder what exactly is their deal, but they don't really explain, you know, too much as to, you know, what it takes to become a junkie and what this means or that means, you know, so they do leave it vague enough, but inside there you get a wacky doctor that's very similar to the cook from part 1 and 2. You also get Amphead, who's very similar to Leatherface, and you do get a dinner table scene, but it's not a full dinner, they just kind of sit around it and do stuff. But the centerpiece at this dinner table is a very messed up idea. It's one of those really creatively gruesome moments, and it's really dark and is definitely going to stick with me for a bit. Yeah, that centerpiece, gee. But it does lead to a big, crazy, over-the-top, explosive finale, and lots of really, you know, strange and weird moments. And yeah, it does go pretty strange and it does go pretty weird, but in this case, it does seem to work. That seems to be the movie's idea from the get-go, and it just gets really bigger, you know, like when comparing this to Chainsaw 4, Matthew McConaughey's character is obviously the biggest, craziest, over-the-top character, and I don't think anyone here gets as close to McConaughey as he did, but a lot of them do go big, you know, like in part 4 you also had McConaughey's girlfriend, and you had W.E., who are okay, and I think all the characters in this movie, there's a lot more of them that go better than those two do. And yeah, there is a lot of people, that's another thing, is a lot more than just a 4 to 6 member family. And yeah, it's a big swirling ball of chaotic mess, but in a good way and on purpose. And overall, I really like this movie. It's weird and strange and bizarre. It's gory. It's extreme. It's just insane, you know? And it is a chaotic mess, but in a good way, you know? And I really do think that this is a better version of the sort of energy from part 4, but given more of a leash, you know? It's expanded upon. But anyway, crazy movie, and on top of all that, an unofficial Chainsaw 5 for us horror geeks. So yeah, definitely worth tracking down, and hey, yeah, if you can find it on this pack, you also get Absentia and 6 other movies, so yeah, definitely worth looking into, especially if you like gory, extreme stuff, and if you like slashers that start super early and somehow managed to stay going the whole time. Not perfect, but a weird bit of insanity, and I really do like it. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my slasher movies playlist. If you guys want to see more, you can click right there and see more. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.